Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to GNG LinkedIn Live segment, Gurpreet and Gail. Today, but we have a little twist. We have a special guest that both Gail and I are very fond of. I also had the pleasure of having Tammy as my first guest last week at Career Talk Tuesday that we had to invite her to be part of our guest for today's topic. Today is a topic that actually been inspired by Tammy and Gil having a conversation yesterday, and it was they were talking about holding leaders and manager accountable for building relationship with employees. The onus should always be on leaders and managers to build environment that their employees feel comfortable. They should be the ones building a relationship with their employees. So I'm going to pass it over to Tammy, not Gil this time, but Tammy, since she's our guest. So we're going to dive deep into this discussion on holding managers and leaders accountable when it comes to building relationship with their employees. So Tammy, do you want to walk us through deep dive into this discussion?
Sure. Thanks. I was expecting Gil to come in, but I'll go ahead.
No, I skipped Gil.
Not my turn this time.
Straight to Tammy.
I know, straight to me. So Gil and I were having this conversation yesterday, and it's a conversation that we often have. And I think Gurpreet, the last conversation, at the end of our conversation, we kind of brought this up about the manager's role and being, I wouldn't say in charge of, but they are instrumental in creating a company culture. And what happens in organizations, and it's happened in organizations I've worked in, and I actually have been one of those managers that have benefited from not having my decisions about whether or not an employee works out in my department stay or go. So a lot of times what happens is managers come in and they just decide this employee is not working out, and nobody challenges them on why this employee is not working out. Nobody challenges them on why they have a high number of turnover in their department, if that is the case. I've been in companies where managers have fired 3 to 4 people within 90 days, and nobody bats an eye, and nobody says, what is going on here? This cannot be a matter of we just keep hiring bad people. It's just a matter of you don't know quite how to manage your people. And so I think managers and leaders have to be held responsible for when they have loss in their departments and loss in their companies. Why are you having this kind of turnover? Are you not a good leader? Are you not engaging your employees? I think what happens is leaders leave it up to employees to initiate and build relationships, and that just doesn't work. You're the leader. You're the person holding the power in that relationship, and that power dynamic is unbalanced. And so if your expectation is that employees' job to make sure that there's a good working relationship, then you're probably going to be losing employees. And so I'd like to see us move to managers being held accountable. Like, you have to have, and I don't even think this is something that happens in organizations, and maybe it does. I just have not been a part of an organization where that it's been, where managers should have a quota of what percentage of turnover are they allowed to have in a department within a year or within 6 months. Like, what does that number look like? And I think if we start holding managers accountable to having employees either quit or being terminated, then I think managers will put a little bit more effort into making sure that they have employees who are happy at work, more engaged at work, and that they're not losing those employees. But if there's no consequence for them losing employees year after year, month after month, what incentivizes them to be better managers? Nothing.
That's so true, though. When you said, like, I've been in HR for 14 plus years, and never held managers. I wouldn't say we didn't held them accountable, but there wasn't like, okay, you have to have X percentage of turnover. It can be higher than this. And if it is, then we got to have like talks and discussions, improvement plans, and all that stuff. You're right. 14 plus years of my HR career, didn't have that. No.
And isn't that, to me, that's just so strange, right?
Because in my field, not my field, in my experience, I was being the one that was holding managers accountable verbally. It wasn't a document. And then I used to run turnover reports every month. And then I used to obviously send it to my boss. And then I used to have We in one of my companies, we had we used to have manpower planning meetings and daily production meetings and stuff like that. But then that's when I used to bring up my topics. Well, hey guys, turnover is like this, and there is an improvement. But again, that's manufacturing. Manpower is very crucial. Right. But I think in an organization where you're service based, I'm not saying manpower is not crucial in any company, but compared to manufacturing to service based, you're correct though. Like we didn't have these discussions. We weren't having weekly meetings to talk about staff stuff. Hey, your turnover rate's high. Your turnover, or it didn't. Never sent a report to managers saying this is how your turnover looks like. So you're very correct on that. That we don't actually hold managers accountable for their turnover.
We don't.
We aren't holding managers accountable for the right things. That's the thing about it. We're not understanding that a manager's role isn't just if you're a manager in marketing or a manager in finance or anything, just to get the results in that area. But a manager's job is to help their people get the results.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I find astonishing is that one of the shows that Gurpreet and I did was around the cost of turnover. And Tammy, you and I have had that conversation as well. And how when you actually look at the numbers and actually do the research on it, you see how astonishingly high the cost of turnover genuinely is. In the fact that managers whose job it is to have these people do a good job and then lose them for their own incapabilities as a manager, then that's something that we need to be looking at, that what the competencies are of managers, of how we assess them, needs to be addressed. Because if we're only looking at the bottom line and we're missing things. We're missing the fact of how much, because you don't actually see it clearly on the bottom line, the cost of turnover. It's not it's not there, in the physical numbers, but it's there.
It's there. So my last position, Gurpreet and I talked about this. I was a director in a pharmacy, and I had a manager underneath me. When I did her evaluations, I factored in how many people we lost. Now, I'm happy to say we didn't lose any employees, right? Because we worked really, really hard to create a really good departmental culture. So we didn't lose anybody. But I also implemented what we call the quality scorecards, because in our line of business, when I first got into the department, all the employees would say, well, I'm just so busy. And, if you're not sure what your employees are doing, that's relative. Busy doing what, right? So I'm director, so I'm not in the day-to-day. I don't know what your busy looks like. So I said to my manager, I said, I want to develop scorecards, because I want to see not just the quantity of work that's going out from our department, but the quality of the work. So I don't want just a bunch of patients getting started on service, but in order to do that, there was a bunch of billing mistakes. There was a bunch of compliance mistakes that we weren't catching because we were just getting people out. So when we implemented a quality scorecard, I got to tell you, nobody was happy about that, because it's like, well, what are you doing? You're scrutinizing my work. And that was hard for people, because employees weren't being held accountable for the work that they were doing. The managers had no idea what kind of work they were doing, which is another reason why you probably have bad managers, right? So you put somebody over to manage the department, but they don't really know what their people is doing. And so whatever the people tell them is they go, okay, well, that's what they're doing, until it becomes a problem, until it becomes an HR problem, or, social problem. You got to fire people, or they make a mistake that's bigger than you realize they would have made, because there was no checks and balances for the work that they were doing all along. Right. And so when we put that in place, our employees weren't really happy with us. And the way I explain that to them is, this is a gauge for us to know what your work is, but it's also a gauge for you to know what your work is. Don't you want to know the quality of work that you're putting out every day? You know you're starting 10 patients, but don't you want to know you started those 10 patients and you had zero mistakes in doing that? That you're working a little bit harder than the person next to you? Because it's all relative. Like everybody would say, well, Ola is the best one in this department. And we go, okay. And then when we had numbers, guess what? She wasn't the best. That was just what people thought, because they saw her at her desk longer, and she worked through lunch. And so she just appeared to be the better employee. She appeared to be the one that worked the hardest. But when we got to those scorecards, she wasn't. The person that nobody thought was the hardest worker actually was. And so when we put it in, they were unhappy about it. But like I said to them, this is about holding you accountable for your work. And it's about holding the manager that I put in charge of you accountable for the work that you're doing. Because now when I have to do her evaluation, I have something to evaluate her on. We haven't lost anybody. And how improved have your employees been since the quality scorecards? Like how did Ola go from scoring a 7 and now she's scoring a 9? And what did you do to get her from a 7 to a 9? How many conversations you had to have? And so I think a lot of managers aren't really getting in and figuring out what their employees are doing. That's number one. Half of them don't even know. They couldn't sit at an employee's desk and do their job if you paid them. They just don't know. And so if you don't know what your employees are doing, you're not invested in them as knowing them as people, and you can fire at will, and nobody's going to say, hey, wait a minute, you just lost like 5 people. And 2 of those people you lost were supposed to be your top performers. What's going on here? So if their evaluation was tied to that, like your raise is tied to that, your evaluation is tied to that, I think you would see managers being more proactive and creating a work culture that is sustainable.
But I want to add to that is also, you're paying employees salary, you're paying employees compensation. Don't you want to know your return on that? Like, don't you want to know how much you're actually getting out of the investment you've made, right? Like I've had these conversations with many CEOs. How much is your employees producing? If you're paying them, I'm going to take this random example. Actually, I'm not taking a random example. I'm actually taking a specific example. An employee in the company was being paid $200K. What was the return?
Right.
Negative. I even knew that this person was not his output was not efficient. Actually cost the company probably a lot of money to carry this individual as a manager up senior level, $200K. But yet the CEO of the company does not know his return. I'm like, well, what is he producing for you?
Right.
The person doesn't even know how to do manpower planning.
Right.
Production's not moving.
Right.
Production is like you are spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, hundred thousands of $200 to $1 million on staff agencies because of lack of poor planning. So where's your return? Right? If you're gonna pay somebody $200K, the output's gotta be like, I would say 3 to 4 times that salary.
Right. It has to be. My employees weren't making near that, and I still wanted to know what their work was doing. Because, like I said, when I got in the department, everybody was like, well, we're busy. And I'm like, okay, what?
The common cliche, right?
Okay. Well, let me measure that. Let me measure what that busy looks like. And again, like I said, when we first put that quality scorecards in place where we were measuring their work, they were not happy. But that's because they had 2 years of just saying that they were busy. And their managers didn't know what they were doing. So that worked, right?
Yeah, it was easy for them.
If you put accountability in a system, initially people are going to buck at it. But then what it does is it gives, what I noticed that it gave my employees a sense of pride and purpose. So when they came into work every day, they knew what their work was. And when they could get their scorecards at the end of the week, showing and demonstrating the quality of their work, they had pride in that. They didn't have that before. Like nobody was saying to them, last month your quality scorecard was a 7, and this month, oh my God, you scored a 10 all month. There's a sense of pride that an employee gets from that. And what it says to the employee is, my manager is invested in me and wants to know what my job is. They want to know what I'm doing. They're investing in me being a better employee. But if nobody's doing that, your employees think, well, there's no vested interest in me. I got no vested interest in them.
There's an expression I heard many years ago, which is you can only expect that which you inspect. Yeah. And this sounds to be doubly true for the case you're talking about here, Tammy, because one, it has to do with the employees and inspecting what they were actually doing.
Right.
But then there's also the other side of inspecting the managers and understanding that it's the manager's job, what we were talking about before. So that's why it's very true that you have to be inspecting, and you have to know what to be inspecting. You have to know what you're evaluating, because if they were evaluating before, well, I got 10 people in really, really quickly, but it didn't matter about quality, then that's what you were going to get.
Right.
If you're inspecting speed, you're getting speed. If you're inspecting quality, you're going to get quality.
So I had this question, but so does Alicia. What is a scorecard? So I was going to ask you, do you want to elaborate on, first of all, what is a scorecard? What goes in it, so that when people are listening, viewers who are listening and past individuals are going to listen to the recording, so they can understand when you're saying scorecard, what is a scorecard? And then how do you use the scorecard to evaluate your managers and your employees?
Okay, so the scorecard, I worked in healthcare. So when you work in the healthcare field, there's certain number of things that have to be checked off in order to get a patient started. So we would take those 10 important things. So if I gave Gurpreet a file, it's just like if you were hiring a new employee, right? Yeah. And you have a checklist of all the things that need to be in that employee file before that's complete. And you said, you know, we ran the background check, we did the drug screening, she did her fingerprints, all the paperwork is in. Whatever department you're in, whatever those checklists are that you want to get done, and you want to make sure it's getting done the right way all the time, then you can build a scorecard. And Alyssa, if you get in touch with me, I can send you a sample of what it looks like. But it's going to be based on what your department is and what those responsibilities are. So for us, we had to make sure that the patient consent was on file. And not just that we had a patient consent, but that the patient signed it. And if the patient wasn't able to sign it, let's say the mom signed it, that they had a power of attorney on file that said this person would sign for this person to start service with us. We had to make sure all their insurance information was up to date. We had to make sure we went over all of the legal stuff that we needed to go over, talk about payment. So all those things that needed to get done before a patient could get started on service was in that quality scorecard. So we were checking to make sure they did everything they needed to do before we started a patient. So it just depends on what area you're in. So like I said, Gurpreet is in HR. So there's things that have to be in a file when you're doing HR, right? Yeah. And so if you want to do a scorecard that says, okay, did you have all of this? Okay, we checked it. All right, all of that stuff was in there. Great, your scorecard was done. So it's just going to be depending on what your industry is and what you're trying to measure with your team and your department.
And you were doing this weekly. Was this scorecard like weekly done?
We did the scorecard monthly because our patients got started on a monthly basis. So it's just going to depend on, again, what you're doing.
Operation.
In your operation. Yeah. So if you do a weekly thing, then you may want to do it weekly. And again, my manager had to do this. So this was part of her job. This was part of her job to make sure that our department was producing quality work. Yeah. That when patients got started, they got started the correct way. So if she gave me stuff and I saw those scores dropping, then my conversation to her was, okay, this employee scores has been continually dropping. What have you been doing to remedy this? How many conversations have you had? What other training have you put in place? So the scorecards was her way of measuring the employees, but it was also my way of measuring how she was interacting with those employees and what work she was putting in.
Like I've worked in manufacturing and call centers where we did it weekly. It was done weekly. Well, what manufacturing, it was based on efficiency. It was based on quality, the number of reworks, and a couple other things, safety being another big concern. Call center, I think it was the quality of the calls, how long you were on with the customer, the issues, how do you answer the call. So they were actually being measured daily too, and then a summary of a weekly report. So yeah, there's tons of different ways to measure the output, but when you
put a system in place, it's very important to put a system in place.
But you're right, it does help the employee. It helps in many ways. It helps the employees identify what they're doing good and areas of improvement, right? Like where they need to be trained, lack of training. It helps managers determine, great, your employee's doing a great job here, but here's where they're struggling, so you need to train them and put some development plan together so you can develop them. If you can develop them, you're going to benefit too, right? The output's going to go up, and output goes up, productivity goes up, efficiency goes up. Who benefits?
Everybody.
You as an organization, right?
Exactly.
But a lot of companies, either they're too busy, don't have the manpower, but these little things get overlooked in a lot of, I would say from my experience, it's mostly in the smaller organizations. I've seen this a lot because I've worked in both large and small organizations.
I would agree. In the smaller,
it's always been, in my experience, I've always seen this lacking in smaller organizations.
I would agree with you. It's true. It's in smaller organizations, and because what happens is sometimes the smaller organizations tend to have this family feel, so they don't take the work as serious.
Or they have family members working there too.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother.
When you said family, that's why I was laughing. I'm like, yeah, and they have family members working there too.
Yeah, so they just have
not a bad thing.
Yeah, well,
if they can produce.
I had a CEO that had both of his daughters working there. That was not a good thing, because who's going to fire the CEO's daughters? And they weren't producing anything. They weren't working very well.
I had a client's CEO and COO was the wife. And one wanted to be the cool pert champ that I want everyone to like me. So he didn't want to discipline. He didn't want to hold anybody accountable. The wife was the opposite. She was she wanted to watch everybody like a hawk. You're not working. You gotta clock out because I'm not paying you. And everybody knew her rep was like that. Me and another senior manager, we actually sat her down. We had a talk. Like, how many times have you come to me and we were talking, obviously work, and then how many times have we gone off topic? So we actually had to sit her down and have this reality check with her that, listen, everyone can't be producing 8 hours a day. Actually, research shows that your employees are only productive 6 hours.
Yeah, and if they do a job, it's 4.
Yeah, right? So we had to walk her through different scenarios to get her to like look a different way, like have a different perspective. Listen, there's no way people can work 8 hours straight. There's just no way. So what if someone turned around and had a conversation with their coworker? How many times do you do it? So it was a lot of like her making herself aware of the things that was causing problems with the employees when it came to her. And guess what? You're losing credibility and you're losing trust. Employees don't trust you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they're not going to go out of their way to help you when you need help.
Absolutely. I also want to add that that's a great example. All of this is a great example of why leaders need to get out of the narrative in their own heads.
Yeah.
Because this woman is a great example that she thought this was the way things were, and this is what she needed to do to be successful, right? And so I want to go back to one of the first things which Tammy was talking, which was about the responsibility of managers in setting the relationship with employees. The problem is there are a lot of managers who believe that, but how many times have we all seen a new manager come in and say, so I'm the new manager, this is the way it's going to be. This is the way I work. This is what I'm expecting you to do from now on. Without looking at the employee's lens, the employee's perspective of what has worked, what hasn't worked, what actually needs to be done, but coming in and dictating like a bull in a china shop that this is the way things need to be. And that's not a way to actually build an effective relationship. And it's not an effective way to actually lead people, because people already have their own strengths, their own styles. Countless times I've seen in organizations that senior managers, executives make a poor hire at the senior level for results reasons or whatever it is, and then they start behaving in that department very counter to the rest of the organization.
Right.
Driving their people crazy because they decided this is the way I am, this is the way I've been successful in past organizations, this is the way it's done. When I first started my job as director of employee experience at my last company, I spent the first 2 months listening, just listening. I interviewed everybody individually for at least 45 minutes an hour, some of them even longer, depending on how the conversation went, because it wasn't for me to say, well, I know employee experience and this is the way it needs to be.
Right.
What I was doing was I was trying to understand, this is how they work around here, what's working, what isn't working, and how do we bring everybody on board for change. But too often leaders think, oh, I'm the leader, you do it my way. And that doesn't work very well.
Well, don't you think that's because, don't you think that sometimes those leaders are hired by upper management for that very purpose?
Sometimes, absolutely. There are times.
That manager can't come in and bull in a china shop, and the leadership that hired him don't know in that interview that that's his style. Because I would just assume that you would ask, tell me how you manage your people. And
they don't care. Or they just don't care.
Or the opposite can happen. They give you the right answer just to get hired.
Yeah. I mean, that can happen. That can happen.
Nothing, because it has happened.
Yeah, that can happen.
But you've never coached anyone to do that, right, Gurpreet?
No. See, our coaching style is different, right? Like, so when I first became a manager, and also, like, I'm going to use not recent, but I'm going to use when I was managing my dad's businesses and running my business. So I had a lot on my plate. And I always remember Steve Jobs' quote, you got to hire people smarter than you and then give them the autonomy to do their job, right? Like, you can't hire people and then control them, right? So if I'm running 4 businesses, I'm managing 4 different businesses. I can't do everything, right? So my game plan was, I'm going to hire experts in each field that I need. And I had a one-on-one conversation with each person. And I said, listen, I don't care when you come. I don't care when you go. I just want the work done. Yeah. And we need to meet, for design and printing, we're going to have clients meetings. I'm going to be going on client meetings. And I don't want to be worried about you're not at work, or I don't want to worry about things. I just want to hire people. I want to trust that you're going to get the job done. I just care about getting the job done because it needs to go to a client and we need to make money. And equality, I will overlook the quality and all that stuff, right? Salon, same thing. I'm a stylist. I'll run the business, but I need people who can do the job. I'm not going to hover over you and tell you how to do your job, right? Who am I? I'm not a stylist. So I had, 15, 20 people working for me in different businesses. But the only reason I survived was I gave them the autonomy. I gave them the power. I gave them the flexibility. I trusted them. I didn't tell them we worked like partners. And I said, yeah, I'm the owner's daughter, but we're partnership here. It's going to take all of us to run this business. It's going to be a partnership, and it's the only way we'll survive. But I had one rule. Don't come before 10. I needed that 1 hour to myself. Like, just don't come before 10 o'clock. We will have no problems. I don't care how long you work. I don't care when you go, when you come. Just can't come before 10. I need that 1 hour to myself to plan and think. And rest, I don't care. I don't care. As long as the work's being done.
Yeah.
I don't care how you get it done. As long as we're getting it done, that's all that matters.
But you, myself, and Gil are not the norm. We're not what you see in organizations. And I think part of that is, I think Gil and I had this conversation. We've had so many, but is that people get promoted up in companies. So whoever was there the longest, and then they just keep promoting the employee that was there longest, because then everybody feels like they're entitled to that job. And you promote these people and you give them no management training, none, right? And so people can only manage from the experience of how they were managed. So if they had a manage that hovered, then what they do is when they become managers, they hover. So they only do what they know. And so if you're going to promote within, and let's just say you're trying to change your organization around, you got all the bad managers out, great. But now the people that you're promoting only know how to manage based on the bad manager they had. And so if you're going to promote people, you got to give them management training. I don't think enough companies invest in management training for the managers that they have. Because if they did, the managers would understand. Because Gil and I were having this conversation. There's, I think departmental cultures is what really happens in an organization. And then there should be a thread that goes out through the organization that ties all these cultures together. But most of that culture is going to happen on a departmental level. The culture we had in my department was very different than what was in billing and very different than what was in pharmacy. to the point where we had people from billing and pharmacy wanting to transfer into our department. And it wasn't because they were going to make more money with me. It wasn't even that they were going to be doing a job that was exciting. In fact, coming into my department, they were having a less exciting job than the one they had. They wanted to buy into the
working with you less exciting? What? I don't even know how that's possible. But I want to highlight something you're saying though there, which is about management training, which is, first of all, probably another topic that we should have you back on to discuss, because it's something that I am behind you 100%, that we throw people into these supervisor, into these manager roles, and then especially in the small and medium business space, which is the area that Gurpreet, that's our focus for the show, which is around small and medium business. Right. So that's something that I definitely think that we should bring back. We should bring you back to talk about, because if the other managers had training of how to be effective leaders like Tammy, they wouldn't be running to your department. We wouldn't just be leaving it to their instinct and their gut of how to be a manager, or how they learned from what their past managers were. They would learn good things of how to behave responsibly and how to take care of people. So I think that's one. I would love to have you back on to discuss that very topic, because I think that's a good one that Gurpreet and I should be tackling soon.
You are touching on like, it is going to require another whole discussion on training, because a lot of people, you're right, a lot of times you're promoting within, but then you've never invested money to first get them developed before you give them the leadership role, right? Like leadership training, manager training, because these things are very crucial, because you can make or break your employees because of managers. You all know this. People leave organizations because of their managers, right? Good, bad, ugly. And also the output the employee is going to produce is also dependent on the manager.
Absolutely. If you hate your manager, you're not working for them. Have you ever worked hard for a manager you didn't like? I will promise you.
Who works hard for managers?
I never worked hard for a manager I didn't like. I did what was necessary to clock out and go home.
And what is the cost of the organization of that half-assed approach? But there are thought leaders in the employee experience world who've actually started to differentiate around manager experience, because of the value around that, because it is its own unique experience, because so much of our employee experience is filtered through our manager, especially our experience with the organization, so to speak, and our opportunities and all of these things, who does our performance reviews. So there is a huge value in that, and it gets ignored in small and medium business. So that's why let's talk training at some point for sure.
So I want to, like, we're going over, but I want to just wrap this up into, Tammy, what is your opinion, your professional opinion, 5 takeaways or 5 tips that managers who are listening to this, or supervisors, anybody that's looking to become a manager, what are 5 things they should focus on to build good relationship with their employees?
So I would say tip number 1 is exactly what Gil said. Shut up and listen. Listen to your employees, ask and inquire. Inquire who they are, find out what motivates them, and just listen. The second is provide them with training and opportunities. A lot of employees are sitting in jobs that they're just bored. They don't know what else to do, especially if it's a job that doesn't require a lot of thinking or moving. And so find ways to create opportunity. 3, create upward mobility. So in my department, there was not a lot of place to go. So we created like a customer service 1 and a customer service 2. So you do something a little different. Create opportunities for your employees if you are limited in terms of their ability to move up. 4, I would say if you have employees, depending on what your structure is, if you have a supervisor in between yourself, inquire about how that supervisor is how that supervisor is being for that employee. Are they getting the information that they need? Are they getting the help that they need? Are they getting the tools that they need? And 5, go back to the first, just listen. Employees need you to listen. And I think managers come in thinking they know it all, and you don't, because you're not doing that job. You need to listen to the people who are doing the job and listen to them about how they can do that job better.
Gil, do you want to add anything
First of all, those were great. The only thing I want to add is actually what Eric has put in the comments here about giving alternatives to growth other than just management or leadership. One of the wisest things I've been told over the last 6 months is that there's no longer a corporate ladder. It's a corporate rock climbing wall. Yeah. And the reality about the rock climbing wall is that sometimes you have to move left to go up. Sometimes you have to move backwards to go up. Sometimes it's a stretch. But there are a lot of ways that people can grow. And maybe this is something for us to talk about when it comes to the training area. But there are a lot of ways people can grow than just up into a manager role. Right. Especially as more and more millennials, now the entire millennial generation is in the workforce. Right. Well, that's who's been demanding these kinds of areas of growth. And it's not just that they want to be leadership. They just want to learn different.
They just want to learn.
So I appreciate Eric.
Generation Z's already entered the workforce.
Oh, yeah. They're already the first few years of them are already in the workforce.
If corporations are millennials was a headache, well, you're going to see something else for Generation Z.
Aren't we Gen X? Are we considered Gen X?
No, we're
Tammy, you and I are Gen X.
We're
actually, yeah, I think actually Gurpreet's with us.
Well, I'm 80, so yeah, we're X.
You're on the cusp.
A cusp, yeah, I'm on the borderline. Then there's Y, and then there's Z, Generation Z, which is I think they're 1995 or 98 born. What year is my nieces? I gotta look at my nieces.
It's around there because it's like millennials from around 80, 82 to about 95, 96, 97.
Yeah, I did a whole research on Generation Z. That's for one of my clients. Hence why I said if you thought millennials were a problem, and you got a whole nother thing coming with Generation Z. Because they're not your typical. They're not millennials. They're born. They were born in technology. They were born to do multitasking.
Yes, yes.
You cannot, like I had this discussion with one potential client. Well, I'm hiring these people and I don't want to hire millennials. I'm like, what millennials? I think you're talking about Generation Z because they're multitaskers and they'll be on their phones, on social media, and they can still work and produce, right? You can't control people on how they do their work or output anymore. And it's all thanks to the millennials and Generation Z.
Well,
I love millennials. I love millennials. I love the way they have changed the workforce. I love the way they have demanded better conditions and not put up with crap conditions that Gen Xers like myself and baby boomers before me, that we just put up with crap jobs because we thought we needed to, job loyalty and all of these things that was spouted to us and societally put on us, which is all a load of crap. And that the millennials are saying, hey, if you're going to have me for X number of hours a day, you better treat me at least decently. At least decently.
You got
millennials. I'm telling you, millennials have made everybody's workplace, or they're making people's workplace better for that very same reason. Millennials
and Generation Z's going to take it up a notch. Kick it up like 10 times.
Love it. I love it.
Because like those guys are, I think they're like beast. Like when I did research on them, I was like, oh, these guys are beast, right? Because they can do literally 10 things at the same time.
My son's that way. My son is 21 and he can be building a website.
So your kids are Generation.
Yeah, and send an email. And I'm just like, how are you keeping this all together? And he's just like, what? My daughter is 14. It's amazing what these kids can do. I need to concentrate on one thing at a time. I just work but they don't need to. They don't need to.
It's very, very amazing what these guys can do. Very amazing. Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Gil, you want to add?
No, that was great. So happy we had you on, Tammy. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
I just want to add one or two things to the tips that Tammy and Gil added. I'm just going to add my ending remarks is that relationships are like marriage. Everything you need to do to make a marriage work is pretty much the same you need to do as an employer-employee or manager and an employee relationship. The biggest thing I think managers need to do is give autonomy. You can't hire people and then micromanage them and then dictate how they should produce their work. You should hire and then trust them and give them the power and the autonomy to do their work the way they see best.
They can only get that if they have some management training. You know,
So
we're talking about
Tammy back.
to do that. Yeah, that's a whole management training thing. Because I think managers need to give their employees autonomy to do the work. But if they haven't been managed in that way, they don't know how to manage in that way.
You're right on that, because when I'm reflecting back on my management skills, it does stem from my first boss, because he was great, gave me power, gave me autonomy, trusted me,
yep.
Made me feel so comfortable. I still this day talk to him.
Yes.
He's super old, like super
yes.
old. But as you're talking about all this, and I'm like going back to mentally check. Yeah, this one was good. This one, no. But yes, if you've had good bosses and bad bosses, you can compare and then determine your management style. But if you work in one company and you've had bad bosses, you don't know what the good one looks like.
You don't know. You have no idea what the good one looks like. And even if you had a good one, if you've had more bad than good, you'll remember the good for your own personal stuff. But you will take all those bad management traits and you will inflict that on somebody else. I've seen that time and time again, because you have more bad management experience. And so you think that's the way people should manage. But you will talk about your good manager, just like it's only personal to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't even think to give that to your employees, because you've had 10 bad managers after that one good one. And so the one just becomes a personal thing, but you don't think, well, maybe I should manage the way that manager managed me, because you've had 10 awful managers since the good one.
But that's actually how you should be looking at when you become a manager is, well, what kind of manager do you want? You need to reflect back on how you were treated, the good and the bad, and then kind of determine, okay, well, the good ones treated you like this, then it should be kind of like where you
do a mix.
Yeah.
You do a mix. Because some bad managers are bad. Maybe they have bad bedside manners. Maybe they aren't really nice, but maybe they held you accountable, and maybe you liked that part of their management style. You just didn't like the way they spoke to you. You didn't like the way they presented things to you, but you appreciated the accountability. So you can take that. If you like the accountability factor that one manager had, take that and then just incorporate your own style of how you would want to be spoken to, and just apply that to the way you manage. And that's why I tell new managers, what is the best? Give your employees the best part of you while still holding them accountable. Because you can hold employees accountable. It's how you do that. It's how you speak to somebody. You know, I would have tough conversations in my office, and I would say, when I first got into the department, I would say, we're having one-on-ones. And they had gone through a bunch of bad managers. And so they would come in and they would sit down and they would say, well, I have nothing to say. And I was like, well, I mean, at some point you want to find something to talk to me about, because you got to do this every week. It's on the calendar. And I kept doing that and kept doing that and kept doing that. And after a while, they realized, oh, okay, so she does want to know what I think and what I feel. So maybe I'll talk in these meetings, because I don't want to just look at her. And so they would come in, and the first, one-on-ones were very stiff. And after a while, they got easier and they got better. And I didn't talk to them about work. I didn't ask them what was happening at their desk. I was talking to them about them. Tell me what's going on with you. What do you like? How is, the kids, whatever. And before you know it, those personal relationships would then bleed into work. And it was like this easy transition. And so then they could trust that, okay, I have a manager that actually cares about what's happening with me. And so it was just taking some of the good stuff that happened with my boss that you and I talked about in our first conversation, and some of the, the bad stuff. Like, I had bosses that held me accountable, and I made sure I helped my employees accountable, but I brought my sense of care and personality to that accountability, which made a difference. And so that's what when I'm coaching managers and trying to get them to understand how to manage people, it's just treat them well. You can still hold them accountable for everything, but at the beginning of that is treat them well. And I promise you, they're going to pay you that back in spades. You're going to get the best work you can out of your employees if you treat them well.
And the building the trust goes in.
Yep.
With any relationships, there's got to be trust, right?
Yeah, it's trust.
Honesty.
And it takes a while. And I think that's where managers get stuck. Because if you come into a department, let's say Gil was the manager and he was awful, but he was their manager for 5 years. And you come in, Capri, and you're just so beautiful and petite and pretty. And you come in there all bubbly, right? They've had 5 years of distrust. So you're not going to come in there and these people are going to trust you right away. So what happens is managers try and then they give up too soon. So it's like, well, I've had 5 one-on-ones and they're not talking to me. And I've asked them over and over again. Well, you keep asking and you keep asking and you keep asking until they trust you. And when they trust you, they're going to pay you in spades. I promise you, every time they'll pay you in spades.
So on that, we're going to end our segment. We did go a little bit over, but well worth the information from Tammy. Thank you, Tammy, for hopping on today and coming on. Definitely we'll have Tammy back, and we're going to have that discussion about manager training, why it's important. So we'll figure out a time with Tammy, and she'll be back. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Gail and I will be back Monday. We're going to go back to 12:30 segment, and we're going to stick to 12:30. So this segment will now move back to 12:30 every Monday and Thursday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. All my LinkedIn profiles, you have to kind of be on my profile to catch the LinkedIn Live or get the replay. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Tammy, once again, thank you so much for sharing such great insights on management, leadership, and holding them accountable. So thank you so much. And then everybody else, hope you guys all have a great weekend as we're near the end of the week, and we will see you guys on Monday. Bye.
Bye.